Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Apocrypha Apocalypse. I'm Gary Machuda, and this episode we're going to look really quickly at an announced new discovery from the Dead Sea fragments from the Minor Prophets and talk a little bit about whether or not it has any impact on the discussion of the canon. So fasten your seatbelts, folks, because the Apocrypha Apocalypse is about to begin. So earlier this month, it was announced by the Israeli Antiquity Authority that some fragments from the Minor Prophets were found in the Cave of Horrors, and specifically fragments from the Minor Prophet Zechariah and also Nahum. Unfortunately, all the information I have comes from press releases and news articles, and I put links to those in the comments section below. Also, I give you a link to a really good website if you ever want to look in depth about the Dead Sea Scrolls. It's an excellent website. I also put the link at the bottom. So let's fill in the details about what was found. It was found in Cave 8 of the Dead Sea Scrolls. This is known as the Cave of Horror. And it got that name because in this cave was found 40 skeletons of Jews who were trying to escape with their life during the Bar Kokhba revolt against the Romans. This cave, by the way, was well known. In fact, we had fragments from the Dead Sea Scrolls from Cave 8. Sometimes it's given the Segula 8 HEV for its location. And what are these fragments? Well, they are the Minor Prophets in Greek. And an interesting feature of these documents is that the name of God, the sacred tetragrammaton, is given in Hebrew script, and to be more specific, Paleo-Hebrew script. There's not much information as to how these fragments square with any known text type from the articles that I read. All that's said is that the text differs from the Hebrew Masoretic text, but it doesn't tell us whether it aligns with any other Greek text that we know of. This, by the way, this description is not very different from other fragments that were found in the same cave. They were also in Greek on parchment. They also had the tetragrammaton in Paleo-Hebrew as well. So this just happens to be more fragments that were located in the same cave. Not exactly earth-shaking discovery, but nevertheless, it does give us even more data points to help us figure out the transmission of the text. One interesting thing is that the Minor Prophets were almost always included as a single scroll, yet both these fragments are from different hands. So that's another interesting little factoid. And again, since we're relying on secondary information, these articles also quote from experts that were part of the investigative committee, which basically says that if these fragments tell us anything, they show that the Hebrew text was not static, it was not fixed, it was somewhat fluid, and some of the differences amongst these fragments show some very minor, but also some significant differences, which is something that we talk about a lot on this channel anyway. What about the canon? Does it have any implications in terms of the canon? Well, not much. If anything, it's just yet another nail in the coffin of what's come to be known as the Two Canon Theory. Perhaps you're familiar more with it as the Palestinian versus the Alexandrian canon theory, which basically argues that in Palestine, they were all Hebrew or Aramaic speaking Jews. They were conservative and they would only accept texts that were originally written in Hebrew or Aramaic. And this meant that they only accepted the proto-canonical books, while the Jews in Alexandria were Hellenized, they were Greek-speaking, and they were more theologically liberal. And so they not only accepted the proto-canon, but they also accepted the Deuterocanon as well. This theory was very popular over a century ago, and until it was eventually debunked and destroyed back in the 1950s. And it's really taken several decades before this theory has finally been discarded, even amongst popular defenses of the canon. The main reason being that all the parameters that it sets up have been proved false. For example, the Jews in Palestine was just as Hellenized as any other major city in the Middle East. And there's good evidence that was a very large Jewish Greek-speaking population in Jerusalem as well as in surrounding areas. And chances are, if they read scripture, they likely read it from the most popular Greek translation, which is the Greek Septuagint. This is a Jewish translation that was made beginning a couple of centuries before the time of Christ, and it's also the preferred text of the New Testament. Whenever the New Testament quotes the Old, it prefers to quote it in the Septuagint. So Palestine was just as Hellenized, just as Greek-speaking as those in other cities as well. And also the Deuterocanon, 5 of the 7 deuterocanonical books are believed to be written either in Hebrew or Aramaic, which would be problematic for this theory. So there's only 2 books that scholars believe were originally written in Greek. And also the Jews in Alexandria most likely would not have accepted any books that weren't first accepted in the Holy Land. So basically this theory's been discarded. The additional fragments, if anything, just gives more ammo to the fact that yes, Jews in the Holy Land did read scripture from Greek, and that's about it. It's just another pebble, if you will, on the scales against the Two Canon Theory. For me personally, I would like to learn a little bit more, whether it aligns with any particular Greek text type. That would be interesting. It also calls attention to an area that I speak a lot about in my books and my own understanding of when the rabbis closed the rabbinic canon. I believe this happened sometime around 100 AD to 135 AD, sometime between the 2 Jewish revolts. The Bar Kokhba revolt, I think, is very important because in the first Jewish revolt, the Jews were led by various zealots against Rome. Remember, in the New Testament, the Jews were being occupied by Rome, and around 66 AD, they rose up to overthrow this authority, only to end catastrophically with the destruction of the temple in AD 70, and the first revolts ultimately put to an end a few years later. It's really during this period that the Jews were really in a situation that was intolerable because they could not offer all the sacrifices prescribed in the Mosaic Law because the temple was no longer standing. So it was really under the auspices of Rabbi Akiba ben Joseph, who was the head of the school at Jamnia. And he led the Jews to start collecting the oral traditions that were never written down. He started selecting and writing those down. He also appears to have selected a single normative Hebrew text. He also seems to be behind the repudiation of the Greek Septuagint, which we just talked about. He also is the head rabbi that declared Simon Bar Kokhba to be the Messiah, proclaimed in the book of Numbers that he would lead a successful revolt against Rome, free the Holy Land of Roman influence, and rebuild the temple. And of course, this false Messiah and Akiba, the false prophet, ultimately came to an end. Bar Kokhba was murdered, Akiba was martyred, and a horrific persecution was unleashed against the Jews. And really, Judaism was in a fight for its life for the next few decades. So it's really within this context of the Second Revolt that these Jews were hiding, trying to save their lives against the Romans, and ultimately die in this cave known as the Cave of Horrors. And hence, that's where these fragments come. And it's interesting that the fragments are Greek fragments of the Old Testament. So I give you a bunch of links in the comments section. I hope this kind of fills out a little bit of the story that you may have read on the internet. All right, take care, everybody. Till next time.